I wasn't supposed to become a part of this story. I was just the wedding planner, the invisible woman in black, a tablet in her hands, the one who fixes the timelines, calms the nerves, and makes sure someone else's perfect day doesn't fall apart. Until I saw the groom, and my entire life crashed down in silence. My name is Emily Carter, and for the last 8 years, I've built a reputation as one of the most reliable wedding planners in Boston. I didn't believe in fairy tales, but I believed in structure, contracts, and backup plans. Love? Love was unpredictable. That's why I married someone stable. Daniel. We were married for 6 years. No drama, no scandals. Just routine. He worked in investment consulting, constantly flying out on business trips under the pretext of closing deals, and saying all the right things, even if over time he stopped putting any feeling into them. But I told myself that this is exactly what marriage turns into over time. Comfort, predictability, silence. 3 months ago, I got a new client. Her name was Chloe Whitmore. Young, elegant, wealthy, the kind of bride who asks not about the budget, but about perfection. I want something unforgettable, she told me during our first meeting, smiling as if the whole world already belonged to her. I can do that, I answered confidently. And I truly believed it. We met every week. We chose flowers flown in from Italy. A venue overlooking the ocean. A live orchestra. She trusted me completely. And I built her dream, piece by piece. There was only one detail. I had never once seen the groom, and the contracts and invoices listed the name Liam Ross. Chloe explained that her chosen one was an orphan who hated his past life, so he took his mother's maiden name and used his middle name for business. Her influential Whitmore family was paying for the entire celebration, so she signed all the documents. He's constantly traveling for firm business, Chloe said lightheartedly. But don't worry, he trusts my taste. I didn't ask questions. I never ask them if the bills are paid. Everything changed at the rehearsal dinner. I remember exactly what I was doing, adjusting the seating chart, checking the lighting, making sure every name card lay perfectly straight. And then I heard his voice. Excuse me, where should I stand? I froze. My hands stopped. My heart didn't just drop, it disappeared. Because I knew that voice. I had heard it every morning for 6 years. I slowly turned around. And he was standing there. Daniel. My husband. In a custom-tailored suit. Smiling, next to his bride. In that moment, the room didn't spin. Everything didn't blur before my eyes. On the contrary, everything became painfully clear. Every prolonged business trip of his. Every urgent meeting in New York. Every time he avoided my gaze. Every silence of his. Now it all made sense. He was leading a double life, using his middle name Liam to romance a wealthy heiress. He saw me, and for a second, for just 1 second, his mask slipped, his smile twitched, his eyes widened in horror. But then, he pulled himself together, as if I were no one. As if I didn't exist. Emily, Chloe said cheerfully, completely noticing nothing. This is my fiancé, Daniel Liam. Fiancé. That word hit the hardest. Daniel knew that state laws wouldn't allow him to officially marry without a divorce, so he lied to Chloe, saying they would file the paperwork later during their honeymoon in Europe, and for now, they would just throw a lavish show for her relatives. I looked at him, point blank. Waiting. Hoping. For anything at all. For an explanation. For panic. For a drop of remorse. But he just extended his hand to me. Like to a stranger. Nice to meet you, he said calmly. And that's when I understood everything. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was his conscious choice. And I smiled. Because I am a professional. Congratulations. My voice sounded absolutely flat. And in that very same moment, I made my decision. I wasn't going to make a scene here. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to ruin the evening for Chloe, who was innocent in all of this. No, I was going to see this wedding through to the end, perfectly. And then, I was going to destroy his world. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of our bed, still in my work blazer, staring at the wall while the clock ticked louder than ever. Daniel didn't come home. Of course, he stayed at the hotel by the venue. After all, tomorrow was the most important day of his life. Around 4 a.m. I got up, walked over to his closet, opened it. Calmly, without haste, I took a suitcase. I packed his things. Every single one, not chaotically, but neatly. The way I always did. I laughed quietly, not because it was funny, because I had had enough. By 7 a.m. I was already at the venue. Hair tied up, makeup flawless. Black suit steamed. Tablet in hand. Emily Carter, the perfect planner. "Good morning." Chloe waved to me, glowing with happiness. She looked stunning. A silk robe, a glass of champagne, laughing bridesmaids all around. "The day has come," she said. "Yes," I replied with a smile. "The day has come." Everything was running like clockwork. The florists finished on time. The orchestra tuned their instruments. The arch looked exactly as we had planned. White roses, ivory fabric, light gold accents. It was, without exaggeration, one of the most beautiful weddings I had ever created. And it was my creation. Every detail. Every second. At 11:20 a.m. I checked my phone. One message from Daniel. "We need to talk. Please. Let's meet before it starts." I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed a reply, "After the ceremony." Because I need him to stay calm. I needed him to be confident that I swallowed my pride for the sake of money or reputation. I needed him to stand exactly where I was leading him. The ceremony began exactly at noon. The guests took their seats. The music started playing. The ocean sparkled behind the altar. Everything was too perfect. Daniel stood at the front. Calm. Collected, like a man who had never lied in his life. And then Chloe walked down the aisle. Radiant. Trusting. In love. I looked at her, and in that moment, I felt something I hadn't expected from myself. Not anger, not jealousy, pity, because she had no idea what kind of monster she was in love with. They stood next to each other, took each other's hands. Chloe's father handed her over to the groom. The marriage officiant began. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." And that's exactly when I made my move. Not quickly, not dramatically. Just confidently, I stepped forward. Onto the white runner, right into the center of their perfect shot. "I beg your pardon," I said loudly and clearly. At first, people thought it was part of the script. Some kind of technical glitch. But I kept walking. Chloe frowned slightly. Daniel instantly turned pale. "Emily?" she asked in surprise. I stopped a few steps away from them, close enough to see the panic in his eyes. And I turned, but not to them. To the guests. "I apologize for the interruption," I said, my voice carrying through the microphone. "But there is something that must be clarified before the ceremony continues." Silence. Dead silence. "Daniel," I finally turned to him, "are you going to tell her yourself? Or should I help you?" He remained silent. "Of course." Then I opened my tablet, pulled out an official document with a seal. Our marriage certificate, issued 6 years ago to his real name, Daniel Carter. A whisper ran through the rows of guests. Chloe's smile faded completely. "What is this?" she whispered. I walked closer and handed her the paper. "My marriage certificate," I said softly. She looked down. "Read the names. Read his real name. Read mine," then looked at him. "Daniel?" Her voice broke. "What does this mean?" He finally found his speech. "Chloe, wait, I can explain everything." "You are married?" She screamed across the entire beach. The illusion shattered in a single instant. Guests jumped from their seats. Someone started filming on their phone. Daniel took a step toward me. Angry, cornered. "You had no right to ruin my life." "No," I cut him off, remaining ice cold. "You lost the right to control this story the moment you decided you could use 2 women for your own gain." I turned to Chloe. My job is to make sure your day is perfect, I told her quietly. And a perfect day cannot begin with such a monumental lie. You deserve to know who you were about to bind your life to. Tears streamed down her face. Her hands shook. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know, she whispered. I know, I replied. And it was the truth. Chloe looked at the certificate one more time. Then at Daniel, who was trying to babble excuses about how we are already breaking up. And then something changed in her eyes. Not brokenness, rage, and pride. Without another word, she took off the ring with the huge diamond and threw it right at his feet. The ceremony is over, she snapped. And that was it. The wedding was finished. Daniel tried to run after her, tried to grab her father's hands, but the Whitmore family security quickly put him in his place. The truth doesn't just destroy. It exposes the essence of things. Guests were hastily leaving. The orchestra was packing their instruments. The perfect day had turned into chaos. And in the middle of all this, I stood motionless, without tears, without pain, free. Later that evening, I returned home. The house felt different, empty, but surprisingly light. An hour later, there was a knock on the door. It was Daniel, pathetic, angry, his face smeared with sweat. He needed to pick up his things. I didn't let him pass the threshold. I rolled out his suitcase and handed him the folder I had prepared during the night. Divorce papers. Sign it now, or tomorrow your story will be in every tabloid in Boston. The Whitmore family will gladly play along with me, I said calmly. He looked at me with hatred. But he had no choice. He took the pen, pressed the paper against the wall, and swept his signature across his part. For the first time in many years, he did something quickly and without extra words. I closed the door, returned to the table, and put my signature down. That was it. I was no longer Emily Carter, Daniel's wife. I was just Emily Carter. And that was more than enough. The story could have ended there, beautifully, simply, predictably. He betrayed. I took revenge. The marriage dissolved. Justice prevailed. But life doesn't stop at the moment of triumph. That's only where the consequences begin. 3 days later, I got a call from an unknown number. Emily? A voice asked quietly. I recognized it immediately. Chloe. For a second, I thought she would start screaming or accusing me of making a fool out of her in front of her entire social circle. Instead, she asked, "Can we meet?" We sat in a quiet cafe by the window. No makeup, no designer dresses. 2 women who had been deceived by the exact same man. I checked everything through lawyers, she said, squeezing a cup of untouched coffee. Everything you said is true. About his real last name, about your marriage. He lied to me from day one. I nodded. I truly suspected nothing, she added. I know. Silence hung between us. But it wasn't heavy. It was honest. He told me that his past life was left behind, that he was alone. Chloe smiled bitterly. He knows how to choose his words. Oh yes, he's a professional at that, I replied. She looked at me. And you are a professional at timing. I remained silent, because there was nothing to argue with. She leaned a bit closer. What are you going to do now? I thought about it. About the empty house. About the years I gave to a man who created only the illusion of stability. About how I dissolved into work just to avoid noticing the emptiness at home. I'm not starting over, I said slowly. I'm just starting right. For the first time during our conversation, Chloe smiled sincerely. Glad to hear it. We didn't become friends. Our past wouldn't allow that, but we left that cafe with something more durable. Mutual respect. And a week later, the consequences caught up with Daniel in full force. The Whitmore family completely destroyed his career. They severed all contracts with his firm, where he was listed as a partner. His management started an internal investigation, and it turned out that a double life required money. Financial machinations, kickbacks, and shell companies surfaced. The man who thought he could sit on 2 chairs lost absolutely everything. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. My goal wasn't revenge. My goal was peace. A month later, I took my first new client. A small wedding. Simple. Very sincere. The bride didn't demand rare flowers or an orchestra from Europe. She just looked at her groom as if he were the center of her universe. And when I was adjusting her veil before she went out, she quietly asked me, "Emily, do you believe in love yourself?" I froze. For a long time, I was sure my answer would be a hard no. But then I looked at her, at how her fingers trembled slightly from excitement, at how the groom waited for her at the altar, nervous, imperfect, but real. And I understood. Love isn't to blame for what happened to me. I just gave it to the wrong person. And I smiled. "Yes," I said. "I do." The doors opened, and she walked forward to the sounds of the march. This time, everything was exactly as it should be. And as for me, I no longer stand like a shadow in the background. I am no longer the invisible woman with a tablet who saves other people's illusions. I am a woman without lies and without fear. And for the first time in many years, I am not planning someone else's happy ending. I am finally writing my own.